Good morning. Today we'll talk about the second phase of pericyclic reactions, that is we'll talk about the reaction conditions. Now first question that comes to the mind is, why do we need to talk about reaction conditions? We know normally when we talk about reaction conditions we talk about two type of conditions. One is thermal, another one is photochemical. Why do we need to discuss them? Is it the case that in the thermal reactions the product are different and in the photochemical reactions the product are different? Then only we should need to discuss it. Otherwise, if the products are same in both the reactions, why should we need to discuss them? So in order to understand this thing, let's try to differentiate. I've already taken up this point previously also. I'll try to explain the difference between thermal and photochemical reactions once again. Now, as the name suggests, thermal reactions are those reactions which occur in the presence of heat energy or thermal energy, and photochemical reactions are those which occurs in the presence of light energy. That means this occurs in the presence of photons of light which strike the molecule. Now, the point is, when you give thermal energy to the system, that means when you heat the system, the thermal energy of the heat is divided unequally. That means the division which occurs between the division of the heat which occurs between the molecules of the reactant is not equal, unequally. Some molecules will take higher energy and some molecule will gain lower energy, and hence all the molecules will get some share of energy. But since the energy is divided in the reactants, that means the energy received per molecule in the case of thermal reactions is not very high. In contrast to this, photochemical energy is supplied to a single molecule by striking a photon of light. A photon of light comes, strikes one molecule of the reactant at time. That means whatever energy a photon is carrying, that will be entirely transferred to the single molecule, and hence photochemical energy received per molecule is high. That is important. Then, if you look at this, since thermal energy, less energy per molecule means that translational, rotational and at times vibrational levels are excited. What does it mean? Normally when we talk about the various types of excitations or transitions, we say there are normally four types of transitions. Now if you supply energy to a system, there will be an excitation in the translational levels, which means that molecules will start moving faster. There will be a transition or excitement in the rotational levels, that means molecules' bonds will move faster than before. And then there is this transition or excitation in the vibrational levels, that means the molecule bonds will vibrate with greater speed. However, thermal energy, because it is divided in all the systems, do not have the maximum energy, or you can say it does not have the total energy which can bring about the electronic levels. Therefore, generally speaking, electronic levels, which we say excited levels, are not achieved, and hence ground state reactions are the valence states in the thermal reaction. Since excited states are not achieved, the valence shell or the valent orbital in the case of thermal reaction is the ground state orbitals only. And if you can do the contrast of this thing with the help with photochemical energy, more energy per molecule is received in photochemical conditions. This means, of course, translational, rotational vibrations, and along with this, the electronic levels will be achieved or excited. And therefore, we expect that in the case of photochemical reactions, excited states are the valence orbitals in photochemical reactions. This means, and this is a very important point to make, this would mean that in the case of thermal reactions, the reactions would be occurring from the ground state, and since the reactions will occur from the ground state will have different symmetry properties as compared to the excited state. Hence we expect different product in the case of thermal reaction as compared to the photochemical reaction. And in contrast to this, photochemical reactions, since they involve the excited state, they have different symmetry properties or considerations than the ground state, and therefore product which comes out of a photochemical reaction is normally different from the thermal reaction. Now, by and large, what I am trying to say here is the difference in the nature of the products once we carry out a reaction under thermal conditions as compared to that which we carry out the reaction under photochemical conditions. Since, largely summing it up, since under thermal conditions the energy supplied per molecule is low, hence the electronic levels are not excited, and since the electronic levels are not excited, the reaction occurs from the ground state. In photochemical reactions, in contrast to this, the energy is supplied, the photochemical energy coming from the photon of light is supplied to a single molecule, and this makes the molecule excited in the electronic state also. That means other than the translational, rotational and vibrational excitations, molecule will also undergo an electronic excitation. That means electron will reach the excited state. That means excited state will be now valence states, and hence the reactions will be occurring from these excited states whose symmetry properties are different from the ground state. Therefore, the product coming out of the ground state in thermal reactions would be different from the product coming out of the excited state in the case of photochemical reaction, and that is why in pericyclic reactions we need to consider both reaction conditions, thermal as well as photochemical reaction conditions. The next challenge which we receive after understanding that the reactions in thermal and photochemical conditions are different is to understand that how or in what conditions a particular reaction will follow a thermal pathway, or in what conditions the reaction will follow a photochemical pathway. Therefore, our topic is that how do we gauge the reaction conditions in pericyclic reactions. Gauging reaction conditions in pericyclic reactions. Largely speaking, there are 4 methods to do this. The first method is called the orbital correlation method or approach, generally abbreviated as OCD approach. The second method to do this is the frontier molecular approach. We call this as the FMO approach. The third way of checking this, under which reaction conditions the reaction will follow, is the permutation molecular orbital approach, which is the PMO approach. So we normally talk about the gauging the reaction conditions, or checking whether the reaction conditions, under which reaction conditions the reaction will be allowed. These are 3 methodologies to do this, and the 4th are the formulas which we'll be using to check this. Now you'll find that during the course of these lectures which will follow, you'll find that OCD might be the most lengthiest of the all. FMO is easy and predictable. PMO is more easy, and formulas, once you understand the formulas, you'd say it is just a matter of seconds that we can work out under which reaction conditions a particular pericyclic reaction will follow. So I'll shift my attention to the first approach, that is the orbital correlation method. Now this orbital correlation method is based on Woodward-Hoffmann's concept, which says that while transforming from reactants to products, the symmetry remains conserved. What does it mean? Or in other words, we can say from reactants to products, the symmetry remains same. Again, in other words, ground state orbitals of reactants should correlate with ground state orbitals of the products and excited state orbitals of the reactants should correlate with excited state orbitals of products. Now till now I think this will not be very clear. Now what I'm saying is that the basis of orbital correlation method, the OCD approach, is that it is based on the Woodward-Hoffmann concept of correlation of atomic orbitals, which says that if a reaction is moving from the reactant to the product, that means while transferring a reaction from reactant to the product, the symmetry or the orbital symmetry should remain conserved. I'll explain this thing. What does it mean? In other words, from reactant to products during a chemical reaction, the symmetry should remain same, or in general terms, the ground state orbitals of the reactant should match in symmetry, which means correlate with the ground state orbital of the products, and the excited state orbital of the reactant should match in a symmetry with the excited state orbitals of the product. Now, in order to understand this approach, the Woodward-Hoffmann concept of correlation of atomic orbitals, we need to understand that when we are doing reactions in thermal conditions, it is only the ground state orbitals which will be populated. The excited states will not be achieved, and hence excited states are never populated. Therefore, while checking whether a particular reaction is allowed under thermal conditions, all we need to do is we need to draw the molecular orbitals of the reactants, we need to draw the molecular orbital of the products, and while drawing the molecular orbitals of the reactant and the products, assign a symmetry property. If you remember, we have considered two symmetry properties. One was the mirror plane symmetry, another was the C2 symmetry, because these were two symmetry properties which could completely classify our pericyclic molecular orbitals, largely speaking the pi orbitals, into symmetric and antisymmetric. Therefore, again, if you want to check through OCD approach or the orbital correlation diagram approach that whether a particular reaction is thermal allowed or photochemical allowed, I need to draw the reactant molecular orbitals, I need to draw the product molecular orbitals, I need to assign them with one symmetry property or maybe more than one symmetry property, classify those orbitals as symmetric or antisymmetric. Similarly, I draw the molecular orbital of the products, assign the same symmetry property to the product, classify those orbitals as symmetric and antisymmetric, and then check whether the symmetry property of the ground state orbitals and the symmetry property of the excited state orbital matches. If the ground state orbital symmetry matches of the reactant matches with the ground state symmetry, orbital symmetry of the product, then we say this particular reaction is thermally allowed. And if in the reactant the ground state orbitals symmetry does not match in the product with the ground state orbitals, then we say this reaction is thermally forbidden. Now I'll write and explain what I've said to you just now. How to do this. Let's discuss this point by point. Number one, draw the molecular orbitals. Remember which molecular orbitals which are participating. This we've already discussed, that how do we draw molecular orbitals in systems. Draw the molecular orbitals of the reactants and products. Simple, first thing. Okay. Second, choose a symmetry property. Remember, we've already considered two symmetry properties, mirror or C2. Either choose one symmetry property, choose two symmetry properties, that would depend upon the molecule to molecule. Choose a symmetry property and assign these molecular orbitals. Which molecular orbitals? Of reactants and products as symmetric or anti-symmetric. Remember what we did previously when we have drawn molecular orbitals was that we have drawn molecular orbitals of a system, then we've assigned a symmetry operation. If that particular symmetry operation creates this identical or similar molecular orbital, then we say that particular orbital is symmetric with respect to that symmetry operation. If it did not, or if it created opposite signs, then we said that this particular orbital is anti-symmetric. Right. Third, we have done two things. We have drawn the molecular orbital of the reactants, we have drawn the molecular orbital of the products. Then we've chosen the symmetry property, either mirror or C2, and assign these molecular orbitals both of the reactant and the products with those symmetry operations. We classified them as symmetric or anti-symmetric. Then third point. In the third point, what we did, now we correlated. When we say correlated, that means we checked the ground state orbitals of reactants symmetry with ground state orbitals of the product symmetry. What I'm trying to say here, that we've checked the symmetry of the ground state orbital, we draw the symmetry of the product orbitals in the ground state and correlate it. Correlate means match it. If reactants ground state orbitals symmetry matches with the products ground state orbitals symmetry, then reaction is thermally allowed. And if reactants ground state orbitals symmetry do not correlate or match with products ground state orbital symmetry, then we say reaction is thermally forbidden. Right? You understand the difference? What you have tried or explained with these 5 points is that how do you use the OCD approach in judging or in verifying whether a particular reaction is thermally allowed or not. First point, draw the molecular orbital of the reactants and draw the molecular orbital of the products for all the molecular orbitals, both for ground state as well as for the excited state. Then choose a symmetry property. Which symmetry property has to be chosen? That symmetry property needs to be chosen which should, classify those orbitals of the reactant as well as of the products as symmetric or antisymmetric. Should clearly classify. Therefore, we need to be carefully choose a symmetry property. I'll talk about choosing the symmetry property in the later part of this lecture. Then, once you've chosen a symmetry property, assign whether a particular molecular orbital of the reactant is symmetric or antisymmetric with respect to that symmetry operation. Similarly, assign symmetry operation to the molecular orbital of the products. Once you've assigned the symmetry operations on the molecular orbitals of the reactants with that of the molecular orbital of the product, check, match. Third point, match the ground state reactant orbital symmetry with the ground state product orbital symmetry. If the reactant's ground state molecular orbital symmetry matches with the product ground state orbital symmetry, we say reaction is allowed thermally. If it doesn't match, it is thermally forbidden. Why do we come to this conclusion? Is because as per the orbital correlation law, which is based on the Woodward-Hoffman approach, it says that orbital symmetry remains conserved. Since under thermal conditions it is only ground state which is populated, the excited state is not populated. And since the ground state is populated, you would expect that all the symmetry properties of the ground state should match with the symmetry properties of the excited is as per as the Woodward-Hoffman law. Therefore, if ground state symmetry is matching with the ground state symmetry of the product, this is only possible under thermal conditions, we say reaction is thermally allowed. And if it doesn't match, doesn't correlate, the reaction is thermally forbidden. Okay. Now, in order to check whether a photochemical reaction is allowed or not disallowed, what we need to do? Now, under photochemical conditions, we excite the molecule. First excited state is achieved. First excited state would mean that once you strike a molecule with a photon of light, one electron from the valence ground state orbital, the last ground state orbital, the HOMO, remember, would get excited and will go to the next a higher orbital in energy, and that is the first excited state. Therefore, we normally under photochemical reactions achieve the first excited state. Once the first excited state is achieved, then match, or as we've said, correlate the reactants orbital symmetry up to first excited state with products orbital symmetry up to first excited state. If matches or correlates, photochemically allowed. If it matches or correlates, it's photochemically allowed. If it does not match, it is photochemically forbidden. So this is how you work out how do we use the OCD approach for gauging whether a particular reaction is thermally allowed or not. I'll repeat the entire process again. Try to understand this thing, what we have said so far. The OCD approach is based on Woodward-Hoffman law of conservation of orbital symmetry. Woodward-Hoffman law of conservation of orbital symmetry says that when a reaction is getting transferred from the reactant to the product, the symmetry should remain conserved, symmetry should remain same. Now, if I'm doing a reaction under thermal conditions, I'm only getting the ground state orbital populated, excited state is not populated, excited state is not achieved. Hence, Woodward-Hoffman says under thermal conditions, the ground state reactant's orbital symmetry should match with the ground state product orbital symmetry. If it matches, reaction is thermally allowed. If it doesn't match, reaction is thermally forbidden. Conversely, once you do a reaction under photochemical conditions, a photon of light will come, strike the molecule, and one of the electrons from the valence ground state orbital will get excited and reach the first excited state, both for the reactant as well as for the product. Again, now how do I check whether reaction is photochemically allowed or not? Simple, again follow the Woodward-Hoffman law of conservation of orbital symmetry. It says that while transforming from reactant to products, the orbital symmetry should remain conserved. Since under photochemical conditions, it is up to the first excited state which is populated, so I need to check the reactant's molecular orbital symmetry up to first excited state with the product molecular orbital symmetry up to first excited state. If all the orbitals up to first excited state of the reactants symmetry matches with the product's molecular orbitals up to first excited state, we say reaction is photochemically allowed. If they do not match, we say reaction is photochemically forbidden. That is how we normally talk about using the OCD approach in constructing or engaging whether a particular reaction is thermally or photochemically allowed. Now there are two important considerations before we can get to this. If you understand this thing, I'll repeat again. First point of consideration or first point of importance is to understand that how do I draw the molecular orbitals. This process we have already discussed, that how do you draw the molecular orbitals. Since there are a number of molecular orbitals in the reactants, but we need to consider only those molecular orbitals which are actually reacting in the reaction. And you know, it is the pi electrons which are reorganizing largely in the pericyclic reactions. Therefore, we can draw the molecular orbitals corresponding to the conjugated pi electron system. This we've already discussed. So one thing is clear: we draw the molecular orbital of the reactant as well as products. Then the most important point is to choose a symmetry property or choose a symmetry operation. Which symmetry operation? Which C2 along which axis? Mirror along which axis? Now, important thing is we need to classify the reactant orbitals and product orbitals as symmetric and antisymmetric. That particular symmetry property or operation should be chosen which can classify all orbitals as either symmetric or antisymmetric. If I choose a symmetry operation which classifies two different orbitals as both symmetric or antisymmetric, what I'm trying to say, if I choose a symmetric operation which is not able to classify two different orbitals as symmetric or antisymmetric, then that symmetry operation is not chosen. We have to carefully choose a symmetry operation which can easily classify or differentiate or designate orbitals as symmetric and antisymmetric. And once we are done with this, the most important point, we've assigned this symmetry operation to the reactant molecular orbital and the product orbital, then it becomes easy to check whether reaction is thermally allowed. Check the reactant orbital's ground state orbital symmetry with the product molecular ground state orbitals. If it matches, reaction thermally allowed. Doesn't match, reaction photochemical allowed. Then go for first excited state. If first excited state molecular orbitals symmetry match of the reactant matches with the product's first orbital molecular orbital symmetry, then this reaction is photochemically allowed. This is as simple as this in understanding whether the reaction is thermally or photochemically allowed. This might be a lengthy procedure, but of course this is one procedure, the first procedure, which will help us gauging whether a reaction is thermally allowed or photochemically allowed. To substantiate this point and use the OCD approach in further things, I'll use first of all the OCD approach example 1, OCD approach in ethene dimerization. I'm sorry, I should have given a heading to this. I use OCD approach first since we have talked about three categories of pericyclic reactions, we will start with cyclodicial reactions first. I'll use OCD approach in cyclodicial reactions. Okay, the first example is OCD approach in ethene dimerization. What is ethene dimerization? Remember, two ethene molecules could come closer to one another and this could undergo a cyclization to form a cyclobutane. Remember, this is a 2-pi component, this is a 2-pi component. We used to classify this as M plus N cyclodicial. Therefore, this is a 2 plus 2-pi cyclodicial. Remember? Okay. Now, I have in the reactant, I have two molecular two reactants. One this ethene and then this second ethene. And in the product, I have a cyclobutane molecule. Okay. How do I draw the molecular orbitals of the reactant and the molecular orbital of the product? This is a point of my consideration. Right, how do I do this? It is simple. I need to draw the reactant molecular orbitals. First of all, on the left side, I'll write the reactants. On the right side, I'll draw the products. The reactant is two ethene molecules and product is cyclobutane, isn't it? Right. Now, two ethene molecules coming in and forming a molecule and forming a cyclobutane molecule. This is one ethene, this is the second ethene. I consider this entire as one molecule, okay? Because one molecular orbital contains two ethene molecules. Second, third, and fourth. See, normally speaking, I used to draw one, this ethene was drawn like this, one molecular orbital, then second, then third, and then fourth. I've drawn 8 here. These are not 8 actually. This is one orbital, this one is one orbital, this one is the second orbital where two ethenes are approaching, this is the third one, and this is the fourth one, right? Let me draw first of all that this is your energy axis, as we have been doing in drawing the molecular orbitals always, right? If this is the energy axis, let's say this is psi 1, and psi 1 had 0 nodes. Then let me draw psi 2 which had 1 node, then psi 3 which has 2 nodes, and finally psi 4 which has 3 nodes. This is how we used to draw it, remember? Okay, since the reactants are 2 ethene molecules, that means I have to accommodate 2 plus 2, 4 electrons in the reactants. First 2 electrons of course will go to psi 1, next 2 electrons will go to psi 2, next 2 electrons will go to psi 2. That means psi 1 and psi 2 will be the ground state orbitals. This will be the zero value of energy. Psi 1 and psi 2 will be the ground state molecular orbitals, and psi 3 star and psi 4 star will be the excited state molecular orbitals, right? Of course, these are bonding molecular orbitals and these are anti-bonding molecular orbitals, right? So how we have drawn this thing. Now next task is, first of all, we have drawn the molecular orbital of the reactants. The first task that we have at our hand is to put signs here. Now when two ethenes are approaching with one another, let's say this and this plus plus, because you remember when there is no node. Now here I'm talking about two kinds of nodes. First node is between an ethene molecule, and the second node is inter-ethene molecule. So again I repeat what I'm saying. I'm talking about two kinds of node here. One is the intra-ethene node and other is the inter-ethene node. Intra means between the two lobes of an ethene molecule here, and between two ethene molecules like this. I'm talking about two nodes. So the most stable orbital, which is the one in which there is no node here and here. See, this one is plus, this one is minus, and this one is plus, please. Kindly consider. Now this is the most stable orbital. Why? Because this is one ethene molecule, this one was other ethene molecule. Between an ethene molecule there is no node, so this is a bonding overlap. Between this ethene molecule, both lobes are in the same signs, bonding overlap, and two ethene molecules are also interacting in a bonding way, positive interacting with positive, positive interacting with positive. This should be the most stable molecular orbital, right? Psi 2, see, a bonding in phase overlap in one ethene molecule and an in phase overlap in the other ethene molecule. The difference is that when two ethene molecules are interacting, there is an out of phase overlap. See how we have represented this thing. What we have said, the second orbital is one in which there is no node on this axis, positive, positive, negative, negative, no node here. Then there is an intermolecular interaction, there is a node. I'll explain why I've drawn like this. Third, let's say this is plus. Now this is anti-bonding, therefore this should minus here. This is plus, this is minus. See, a bonding overlap and bonding overlap, but between an ethene molecule, here and here you have a node. See, you can see. So you have one node here, two nodes. I'll repeat again because I've not mentioned node. There was no node here, neither there was a node between ethene molecules, nor there is a node between this thing. So we're considering three nodes, three different type of nodes. One node can be here between one ethene molecule, the second node can be between the second ethene molecule, and the third node can be between two ethene molecules here. So three nodes. One here, it can be there, one here it can be there, and one here it can be there. In the most stable orbital psi 1, there should not be any node between anything. Neither here there should be a node, neither here there should be a node, and even when they are interacting there is a bonding overlap, right? When we talk about one node, the one node should come between the molecules. Here there is no node, here there is no node, so this is psi 2 having one node. Third, there should be two nodes, one node coming here, one node coming here. Between the molecule there is no node. And finally, when you talk about the Psi4 orbital, see, there should be 3 nodes. So one node here, and here there should be another node, see, second node here, and between them is also a node. So this is the most stable, most unstable orbital. Since these are anti-bonding, I should put stars on Psi3 and Psi4. Now this is how I've drawn the reactants molecular orbital. See, you understand how have I drawn the orbitals of the reactants? Psi1, Psi2, Psi3, Psi4. I repeat again how I've drawn the nodes. I've considered 3 types of nodes, as in the case of Psi4 you can see. The first node is between an ethene molecule. The second node can be between the second ethene molecule, and the third node can be between 2 ethene molecules. So I'm considering 3 nodes. Once we are considering the most stable orbital, in the case of most stable orbital, there cannot be a node between anything. Neither there can be a node between an ethene molecule, the second ethene molecule, or between 2 ethene molecules. When it comes to Psi2, that is, there is one node, the node is between 2 ethene molecules. An ethene molecule has a bonding overlap with respect to the 2p orbitals. With respect to the 2p orbitals, it is forming the pi bond. Once you consider Psi3, there is a node between 2 ethene molecules, but there is no node between the ethene molecules. And Psi4 has all 3 possible nodes. So this is the molecular orbital of the reactants. While drawing the molecular orbital of the product, let's see which 2 molecular orbitals of the products are formed. You can see in the reactant, this pi bond got converted into this new sigma bond, and this pi bond got converted into a new sigma bond. Therefore, total of 2 new sigma bonds are formed. Since we are drawing molecular orbitals in the case of reactants, we were drawing molecular orbitals corresponding to the p electrons which were involved in the reaction. In the product, these are 2 new sigma bonds which were involved in the reaction. Or in other words, I can say that I am drawing the molecular orbital of the 2 pi bonds which are breaking during the reaction. And therefore, in the case of products, I need to draw molecular orbitals of 2 sigma bonds which are to be formed in the reaction. Okay, if that is the case, how do I draw the electrons corresponding to this 4 sigma bonds? In order to understand this thing, now since it is a sigma bond, that means I'm talking about the in-phase bonding overlap. How do I show this thing? The first orbital. That means this is the one, lobe like this, a lobe like this of the cyclobutane system. See. Like this. First orbital. Second. Third. And finally, fourth. The product molecular orbitals. Now I've considered the 2 new sigma bonds which are formed during the reaction. Now important point of consideration is, if you can visualize this thing, I have drawn the sigma, most stable sigma molecular orbital at an energy level lower than the pi orbital. If this was the energy axis, this is at my sigma orbital is at this, the pi orbital is at this level of energy, the sigma orbital is at lower level of energy. And you know this thing from the molecular orbital concept, that normally speaking, a pi bonding is always more stable than the the sigma bonding is always more stable than the pi bonding. Since it is more stable, it will be lower in energy. Therefore, the first sigma orbital is lower in energy as compared to the first pi orbital. Similarly, in the bonding case, the second sigma orbital is lower in energy as compared to the second pi orbital. Conversely, sigma anti-bonding is largely more unstable or less stable as compared to pi bonding. Hence, I've drawn these orbitals above this level. So pi antibonding is more stable than sigma antibonding. Pi antibonding is more stable as compared to sigma antibonding. Therefore, raised in energy when antibonding is concerned, lower in energy when bonding is concerned. I hope you understand how I've drawn this thing. Okay. Now, how do I draw the molecular orbitals with respect to the products, right? The most stable orbital is when there is a bonding overlap, so this plus here, this plus here, of course this is minus. Now since in the reactants I have, again let me call these orbitals, assign them as phi 1 for the product, phi 2, phi 3 and phi 4. Similarly, phi 1 should have 0 nodes, phi 1 1 node, phi 3 should have 2 nodes, and phi 4 should have 3 nodes. Of course, this is anti-bonding, should be astericized, asteric, we have to put asteric there. Now, how do I draw the most stable orbital? Which nodes I am talking about? Since there is a bonding overlap, see, between this and this can be one node, between this and this can be one node, and if you look here, once they are facing one another, between this and this can be another node. So I am considering three type of nodes here, one between this and this, one between this and this, and one amongst these things, right? This node, and this node, three nodes I am considering, right? Here no node, and no node, positive facing positive, positive facing positive, therefore this is the most stable orbital. Then this is the bonding orbital, hence if this is plus, this is minus. If this is plus, if this is minus here, because I have to draw the next orbital, this is the most stable, the next one will be comparatively unstable. See, these two orbitals are undergoing a bonding overlap, plus is interacting. Similarly, these two orbitals are undergoing a bonding overlap, and negative are interacting. But if you compare this and this with this and this is an anti-bonding overlap, that means one node has come. Next orbital, there will be an anti-bonding overlap, that means plus will interact with negative, plus will interact with negative. See this one. If you look at this orbital, here there is a node, one node, here there is a node, two nodes, but between this plus is facing one another, minus is facing one another, therefore in all there are two nodes. And last, the most unstable orbital, plus minus because anti-bonding overlap, minus plus. So I've drawn all the possibilities, a node here, and between them also there is a node. So these are the four molecular orbitals of the reactant as well as the product. Again I'll repeat, how have I drawn the molecular orbital of the products? I've drawn all the 2 sigma bonds, and corresponding to this 2 sigma bonds, that means 4 sigma electrons, I need to draw 4 sigma molecular orbitals. Remember the same concept. If I repeat again, this molecule has 4 pi electrons, and this molecule has 4 sigma electrons. So if it has 4 sigma electrons, that means it should have 4 sigma molecular orbitals, out of which 2 sigma should be bonding and 2 sigma should be anti-bonding in the case of the product. And when you talk about the reactant, it has total of 4 pi electrons, so that means 4 pi molecular orbitals, out of which 2 pi should be bonding and 2 pi should be anti-bonding, as we have done previously by drawing the molecular orbitals also. Therefore, in the case of product, we have drawn 4 molecular orbitals of 2 sigma bonding, 2 sigma are anti-bonding, 2 pi are bonding, 2 pi are anti-bonding. Now, one thing which, by just looking at the reactant and the product, the question that should strike your mind is, you can see the difference of psi 2 and phi 3, and phi 3 and psi 3 and phi 2. What I've done here is, when the ethenes were to interact or to add on to one another to form a bond, they have not, in the reactant state, they have not bonded to one another. They are coming close to one another to form the bond. Under that condition, it is the intramolecular interaction or the node which is more important than the intermolecular node. That is why phi 2 is placed below than phi 3. What I am trying to say here is, you see that there is an anti-bonding interaction between the 2 ethene molecules. आज केड़ा सैटरडे देख लो ना. So what we are saying here is that in the reactants, the intramolecular load is more relevant and more energy, controlling as compared to the intermolecular load. Means the load between an ethene molecule should not be there as compared to a load between two ethene molecules. Therefore, more stable is the orbital in which there is no load between an ethene molecule rather than between two ethene molecules. Hence, Psi2, in which there was no load in an ethene molecule, neither at this ethene molecule nor at this ethene molecule. No load here, no load here. But there was a load between two ethene molecules. That means this is more stable as compared to Psi3 star, where there was a load in an ethene molecule. Similarly, a load in the second ethene molecule, but there was no load between this because this was facing a bonding overlap here, this is facing a bonding overlap here, right? Therefore, that is why in the case of reactant, Psi2 is kept below Psi3 star, or this is the shape of Psi2 and this is the shape of Psi3 star. And differentiate this from the product that we have achieved. If you differentiate this thing from the product, then you'd understand that in the case of product, these two pi orbitals, once they interacted, it is the bonding overlap between the ethene molecules. That means this was one ethene molecule, this was the other ethene molecule, right? See, this p lobe and this p lobe is interacting in a bonding way. This and this is interacting in the bonding way. Therefore, between the two ethene molecules, there should be a bonding overlap is more stabilizing as compared to a load between an ethene molecule, right? Therefore, I have drawn Psi2 in such a way that two ethene molecules are undergoing a bonding overlap. So actually speaking, this orbital, that is Phi3 star, is getting converted into Phi2. See, bonding overlap here and here, bonding overlap here and here. I've just rotated the molecule and written bonding overlap between this and this, a bonding overlap between this and this. More important, more stabilizing than a node in the ethene molecule. So there's a node in ethene molecule, this one. There's a node in this ethene molecule, this one. Less relevant energetically speaking. More relevant is that between two ethene molecules there should be a bonding overlap. That's why Psi2 is kept below Phi2 is kept below Phi3 star, where there is an anti-bonding overlap between ethene molecules, but in an ethene molecule there is no node. In an ethene molecule there is no node. This is less relevant when the product is formed, but between two product molecules there should be a anti-bonding overlap. This is more relevant. Therefore, when reactant is there, molecular orbitals, two ethene molecules are away from one another. It is the intramolecular load which plays a more decisive role than the intermolecular load. But when product formation takes place, it is the intermolecular load which controls the greater importance energetically as compared to the intramolecular load. That's why we have drawn the orbital picture something like this. Now, we need to consider a symmetry operation that should classify these molecules as symmetric or antisymmetric. But largely speaking, that would mean that we have to take a symmetry property or a symmetry operation that should classify these orbitals, right? Now, I have to take the symmetry operation or choose a symmetry operation which should bisect the bond which is formed or broken. So if you look here, if I pass a mirror plane through this, like this, then it will bisect the molecule. It will bisect the bonds which are to break in the reactant, right? Therefore, this was, this I've drawn vertical, these orbitals I've drawn horizontal. So that means I'm taking this mirror plane in the case of reactant. See this mirror plane. This mirror plane in the case of reactant. Now once I use this mirror plane, and let's classify these orbitals as symmetric and antisymmetric. Remember, mirror was easy. Just take a mirror between this and this. Positives comes in front of positive, positives comes in front of positive. Therefore, this is a symmetric orbital. And then come the second orbital. Positives comes in front of positive, negative comes in front of negative. It is a symmetric orbital. Next, positive, negative, opposite signs, anti-symmetric orbital. Okay. Positive, negative, positive. It is an anti-symmetric orbital. Now the problem with choosing just this symmetry operation is that it classifies this orbital as symmetric as well as this orbital as symmetric, but these are different orbitals. the molecular orbital should be such which should classify this orbital as symmetric and this orbital as symmetric, right? But these orbitals should be different in nature, and if it is different in nature, that means I have to choose another symmetry property to classify these orbitals, and therefore one mirror plane should be chosen in such a way that it is dividing the molecule in this way. Hence the second mirror plane in the case of reactant should be this one, which has to be chosen, this one, and hence this one. Therefore in the case of in the case of ethyl dimerization, two mirror planes needs to be chosen just to classify these orbitals properly. Therefore let's say this was S. Pass a mirror plane here, positive is facing positive symmetric, positive is facing positive symmetric, so therefore this orbital is SS, symmetric orbital. This positive is facing negative, this positive is facing negative, this is SA. Therefore I have differentiated the two different orbitals. It should be differentiated properly. Here positive is facing positive, negative is facing negative, therefore it is symmetric. Here positive is facing negative, positive is facing positive, therefore it is symmetric. Hence I've classified, positive is facing negative, positive is facing negative, therefore it is anti-symmetric. So I've classified these four orbitals as symmetric: SS, SA, AS and AA, depending upon the two mirror planes. This one was the first one and this is the second one, right? The two. First S and A is corresponding to the first symmetry operation, the second S and A is corresponding to the second symmetry operation. Now I have to use the same symmetry operation which I've used in the reactant to the product also. First mirror plane which is bisecting the bond between them, this one was the first, and the second mirror plane which is between the two bonds, that is, this is the second one. Remember, first should be similar to first. First is one which is bisecting the two sigma bonds which are formed. Therefore one which is bisecting the two sigma bond is this one, this is one. The other which is between two sigma bonds is 2. Therefore one which is bisecting the two sigma bonds is this one. So this is my first plane, this one. Here, because I've tilted the molecule, the plane will change. This is my second one and this one is my first one. Okay. Why I've written first and second in a tilted way here is because I've tilted the molecule while drawing the products. See, in the reactant the molecule was facing vertically, but in the product the molecule is facing horizontally, right? Now that means let's put the symmetry operation here. If you look here, this is the first mirror operation. In the first mirror operation you are keeping the mirror like this. Once you're keeping the mirror like this, positive is facing positive, positive is facing positive, therefore it is symmetric. And look at the second mirror operation, positive is facing positive, positive is facing positive, therefore it is symmetric. Similarly, consider the second operation, positive is facing negative, positive is facing negative, therefore it is anti-symmetric. And in the second operation, positive is facing positive, negative is facing negative, therefore it is symmetric. Third, positive is facing positive, negative is facing negative, therefore it is symmetric. And at this operation, positive is facing negative, positive is facing negative, therefore it is anti-symmetric. Fourth, positive is facing negative, positive is facing negative, therefore it is anti-symmetric. And at the second plane, negative is facing positive, positive is facing negative, therefore it is anti-symmetric. So what I've done is I've drawn the molecular orbital of the reactants, I've drawn the molecular orbital of the product, assigned them with a symmetry operation which could probably divide or gauge these orbitals into symmetric and anti-symmetric. That means I need to choose a symmetry operation which could probably divide or classify the molecules as symmetric or anti-symmetric, or in other words, I can say that I've taken those symmetry properties which could probably bisect the bonds which are formed and divided. Now this is one part, we've drawn the molecular orbital. Next part would be to draw the correlation diagram for thermal as well as photochemical conditions. Once we have drawn the molecular orbital of the reactants, the molecular orbital of the products, we have assigned symmetry operation to that, one or more than one, and after the symmetry operations, we have assigned symmetry properties to all the molecular orbital of the reactant and all the molecular orbital of the products. The next step to check whether reaction is thermally or photochemically allowed is to draw the orbital correlation diagram, the OCD diagram. How do I draw this OCD diagram? Again, if I'm checking the thermal conditions, then let me draw the reactants molecular orbital again and product molecular orbital again. But now I'll not draw the orbitals as such, I'll only name the orbitals. For example, in the case of reactant, I had Psi1, Psi2, Psi3 star and Psi4 star. This was the reactant molecular orbital. This was the energy axis. This was the zero value of energy. This was the ground state molecular orbitals. These were the excited state molecular orbitals, right? Similarly, when the product was concerned, this one was Phi1, Phi2, Phi3 star and Phi4 star. Phi1, Phi2, Phi3 star and Phi4 star. I'll again I'll again put the symmetry operations on the symmetry values for Psi1, Psi2, Psi3 and Psi4, and similarly for Phi1, Phi2, Phi3 and Phi4. Let's remember this thing: SS, SA, AS and AA. SS, SA, AS and AA. These were the symmetry properties of the reactant orbitals. Let's confirm again. It is SS, SA, AS and AA, and as far as the product was concerned, it was SS, AS, SS, AS, SA and AA. Okay. Once we are doing the reaction under thermal conditions, the reactant had 4 pi electrons and the product has 4 sigma electrons. Need to accommodate these 4 pi electrons. The first 2 will go to Psi1, the next 2 will go to Psi2. Similarly, in the product, the first 2 will go to Phi1 and the second 2 will go to Phi2. And let's check the correlation of the ground state, because under thermal condition, it is only the ground state which is populated, the excited state is not populated. Let's check the correlation here. If you check the correlation, this and this correlates, SS matches with SS, but SA does not match with AS. Therefore, I can say overall, the ground state reactant orbital symmetry property do not match overall, do not correlate or match with the product state molecular orbitals. Hence, I can say Phi12, Phi22 do not correlate with Phi12 and Psi12. Hence, I can say the reaction is thermally forbidden. Right? So what I did, how have I done this reaction and checked whether the reaction is thermally or photochemically allowed? I draw an OCD diagram for the reactant molecular orbitals and product molecular orbitals. Since I'm talking about thermal conditions, I need to be considering only the ground state reactant orbital and the ground state product orbital. I match the symmetry property of the ground state with that of the ground state of the reactant with that of the ground state of the product. One orbital matched, the other orbital didn't. Since there is a total mismatch, means total reactant orbitals and total product molecular orbitals symmetry is not matching. Even if there is one mismatch, they do not correlate, and since they do not correlate, reaction is thermally forbidden. Now, let's talk about the photochemical conditions. Under photochemical condition, the reaction would be similar. The orbital correlation diagram would be similar, so I can straight away draw this orbital correlation diagram here. Let's say this is the energy axis. This is your Phi1, Phi2, Phi3 star and Phi4 star. Again, this is the zero value of energy. This represents the ground state and this represents the excited state. Here is the reactant, which is your 2-ethene molecule, had 4 pi electrons, and here let me draw the product, which you know had 4 mu sigma electrons, and it was Phi1 for product. Again, see, I've drawn the product molecular orbitals in the bonding lower than the sigma. The sigma bonding is drawn at lower value than the pi bonding, and sigma anti-bonding is drawn at an energy value higher than the pi anti-bonding. Right? Let's put the properties again. The properties were similar. SS, SA, AS and AA. SS, SA, AS and AA, and similarly for the product it was similar: SS, AS, SA and AA. Right? Now, since these are photochemical conditions, what would have happened was that under photochemical condition, the photon of light which had struck this molecule, the valence orbital here was psi2 in the thermal conditions. In the ground state, one electron from psi2 would have gone to psi3 star. That means there would have been an electronic excitation in the case of photochemical conditions. Similarly, one electron of the product molecule from phi2 must have gone to phi3 star. Therefore, the electronic consideration in the case of excited state should have been this: 2 electrons here, 1 electron here, and 1 electron here. Similarly, 2 electrons here, 1 electron here, and 1 electron here. That means the populated orbitals are now up to the first excited state. Which is one is the first excited state? Psi3 star in the case of reactant and phi3 star in the case of products. Therefore, according to Woodward-Hoffmann law of conservation of orbital symmetry, I need to check the symmetry property up to first excited state. That means up to this state, I have to check whether the reactant molecular orbital symmetry is matching with the product molecular orbital symmetry. Okay, let me check. A match here. SS matches SS. Now, there is a crisscross matching here and a crisscross matching here. That means total symmetry property of the reactant and total symmetry property of the product are matching. Since they are matching, I can use this terminology that phi1 2, phi2 1, and phi3 star 1. This is the excited state condition, correlates, matches with phi1 2, phi2 1, and phi3 star 1. Hence, this reaction is photochemically allowed. Right? So this is how we check whether a particular reaction is thermally allowed or photochemically allowed. I'll repeat again the entire process of the OCD approach, and then we use this process, the OCD approach process, for other reactions also. So what do we need to do while considering the OCD approach? First point, OCD approach is based on the law of conservation of orbital symmetry given by Woodward and Hoffmann, which says that while transforming from reactant to product, the symmetry should correlate. If it is thermal reaction, ground state reactant orbitals and ground state product orbital symmetry should match. If it is a photochemical process, the first excited state up to first excited state reactant orbitals and up to first excited state product orbital symmetry should match. Right, this is the first point. Second point is, now we need to draw the molecular orbital of the reactant and the molecular orbital of the products. This we've already considered. We will draw the molecular orbitals of all the bonds which are breaking in the case of reactant and molecular orbitals of all the bonds which are forming in the case of products. Third point, and the most important point, is to assign the symmetry property. That symmetry property should be given or chosen. That symmetry property which should correlate or match in such a which should designate or classify the atomic orbitals as symmetric or antisymmetric completely. Therefore, either one symmetry operation or two symmetry operations or maybe combination of symmetry operations can be chosen. For example, in the case of ethene dimerization, we have considered two mirror planes of symmetry as the symmetry operation. What we did, we've drawn the molecular orbital of the reactants. You remember what we did? We've drawn the molecular orbital of the reactants, all the 4 molecular orbitals of the reactant. We've drawn the molecular orbital of the products. We have given them symmetry assignments. We have given the symmetry assignment to the products. Then we have drawn the orbital correlation diagram under thermal conditions. We have drawn the orbital correlation diagram under photochemical conditions. We've seen that in thermal conditions, the ground state orbital do not match with the ground state orbital of the product, so reaction is thermally forbidden. And we've seen that in the excited state, the ground state orbital matches with the ground state orbital of the products, hence the reaction is photochemically allowed. This is how, with the help of OCD approach, we normally gauge whether a particular reaction is thermally allowed or photochemically allowed. Thank you.